Alright YouTube, so we are back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and more specifically the Yuffie DLC, and discussing the ending. We don't know what it is yet. This isn't a spoiler or anything. We're just kind of discussing what the possibilities are, so to speak. So this is something I actually kind of tweeted about this morning. I just kind of woke up, drinking my coffee, just kind of thinking about, Remake, Yuffie DLC. I'm kind of curious how it's going to end. And why I say that is because within the promotional material for the DLC so far, we've seen, of course, Yuffie within Sector 7 seeing Barret and Tifa, and we know based on the description of what we have for the DLC that this is taking place sometime after the Sector 5 reactor bombing, in which I kind of saw this as an opportunity to get their people within Midgar. So presumably this DLC should be starting sometime around Chapter 8 in Remake Part 1 in terms of the timeline, because that's after Cloud is already separated from Tifa and Barret. Chapter 8 is Budding Bodyguard, where he meets Aerith. We also see in some of the trailers what seems to be the Sector 7 destruction, platefall, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people also think that Yuffie's going to have a role in that, whether that's like saving Biggs and possibly Jessie, or something else. Like, we just think that she's going to be a part of that to some degree, but for the most part, that seems to be as far as Yuffie gets in terms of the Remake Part 1 story. We do see her interacting with Nero in some deep ground shit, and that could be later on in the story, right? Who knows exactly when she's going to deep ground, which of course is below the Shinra building. That might put her towards the end of the game, towards chapter 16, 17, 18, something like that. This could be what puts Yuffie near our heroes, near the Shinra building, near the ending of the game, etc., etc. Whispers, different timelines, singularity, all that other shit, right? Now, obviously, we don't know when this is all taking place within the story of the DLC, but towards the end of it, I think, is a decent guess. Not the very end, but towards the end. Similar to how they handled Remake Part 1, like with the trailers and stuff, we've seen a lot of towards the end game stuff. We've seen our characters running around the Shinra building. We're seeing President Shinra in his office, sitting in his chair, all that other shit. We actually seen within the trailer fucking Sephiroth stabbing Barret, or what we think is Sephiroth, it's Marco or whatever. But still, like, you're seeing some in-game stuff, but we didn't see a goddamn thing from Chapter 18. None of that shit was in anything. So whatever is going to be towards, like, the actual ending of the DLC, we're not going to see till it comes out, of course. And so that's kind of where this question comes in, man. Like, when it comes to the ending of Yuffie's DLC, that's supposed to be the bridge between Part 1 and Part 2 of the Remake project. Like, how does she intertwine with that? Like, she didn't go within the Singularity with us and fight the Whisper Harbinger, so are people that were just, like, within Midgar, kind of, because the Whisperers surrounded the entire city of Midgar, does, like, everybody in Midgar get affected by what we did within the Singularity? And if, like, our characters hopped or changed timelines, was everybody else affected? Was it just our group? Is Yuffie affected? Is she gonna be a part of our timeline still, or different? There's a lot of questions here, man. This isn't necessarily about the actual ending, so to speak, of the DLC connecting with the ending of Remake Part 1, but a lot of people do think that Sonon could maybe die or something towards the end of the DLC, but we see him fighting alongside us with Nero, so if that's the case, and he's supposed to die during Platefall, then the deep ground Nero shit's got to happen before then, which would be before Chapter 12, right? Roughly, of the Remake Part 1 story. So if that ends up being the case, and Yuffie's story only goes as far as the destruction of Sector 7, then I don't know how she could connect at all to the ending of Remake, unless they just do like a massive time jump after that, or there's like a post-credit scene that kind of shows us something. But even if there is some sort of time jump, we've yet to see within at least the promotional material and some of the gameplay that's out there, like how this game is a bridge between Part 1 and Part 2, because that would imply that we get some sort of continuation of the ending, right? Because, again, Part 2 is going to take place right after the ending of Part 1, I'd assume. So how does this bridge the gap between those games? Because we've not seen anything with Yuffie that even involves the Whispers. That's something I forgot to mention earlier in the video, something I tweeted about, is like we've yet to see a single Whisper in any of like the gameplay or trailers, despite them being around and alive at this point. Well, as alive as some sort of spectral cloaked ghost thing from the planet can be. And I know it's not much of an informative video, my dudes, it's just more of a discussion, a bit of speculation, but I just really don't have an answer based on what we have of the DLC so far, which is a good thing. We don't want the DLC to spoil the goddamn ending of the DLC before we ever get to even see it or play it. And before, like, Remake Part 1 actually came out, nobody would have guessed that last chapter of that ending, right? Nobody would have been like, we're going to fight some planet god thing and change fate and time, and Zack's going to potentially be alive, and Jessie and Biggs and Wedge are all going to live. Like, nobody would have thought all this, right? Though there was the one tease of Zack in one of the trailers where you can, like, tell that the sword is Zack based on the position of the Buster sword. The community caught on to that very, very quick. And actually, looking back at this trailer to get that Zack clip, I forgot that it showed, like, the wall of whispers, and we also see, like, Sephiroth absorbing all the whispers and shit during the final chapter, so that actually did show some stuff. I actually completely forgot that this was in the trailer. I haven't watched the trailers in a long time. Obviously, those scenes were out of context. We didn't know when and where they were happening, but those are some Chapter 18 shit, dude. So it is entirely possible that in one of the trailers we got for the Yuffie DLC that there is something being shown towards the end of the game. We just don't know yet that it's happening there. But of course I want to pass off to you guys, since it is just a discussion video, what are your thoughts on the Yuffie DLC in terms of like how it's going to connect to Remake Part 1's story, but also how it's going to bridge the gap between both games, both stories or whatever? Like, is there anything within like the gameplay videos that are out there or the trailers that stands out to you as like the very end of the DLC type of shit? Other than it is, that is the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't new. We'll see more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn all my notifications. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidYT, and my Discord. Links to social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more. And nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Low Gain or leave it like Cobain.